say hello to everybody. Oh, yeah, now we are live. So, hello, everybody. My name is Luke Stapley. I am the marketing manager at Cocos, one of the largest game engine companies working in the Asian markets. We are situated in China. And today we're going to be talking a lot about what's going on in the Asian gaming industry, especially with the hyper-casual game market. We did this last year, and we had a lot of great fun, and a lot of people had some great questions. So we're back here again asking some more questions and finding out what people think about 2022. Before I begin, let me go ahead and introduce some of my guests and the people who will be speaking with you today. First off, let's introduce Ivan. Ivan, can you give us a little bit of information about who you are and who you're working with?
Yeah, my name is Ivan Karpinsky. I represent Azur Games as Great Charity CBO. So basically, we work with lots of hyper casual titles, and so we work in both directions right now. Like we bring in some Chinese game to overseas, and we're also publishing some games in China as well. So these are both directions. So we do. So yeah, that's basically a short intro.
Okay, great. Eddy, I think we lost you. Are you still there? Can you give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm still here, but my parents are talking to me, so I just mute.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you then. We'll get back with you a little bit later then. Vikas, could you go ahead and give us a little bit of information about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Luke. Hi, everyone. This is Vikas Gulati. I'm founder and CEO of JamBox Games. We are a competitive game publishing platform based out of Singapore. We work with a host of developer studios, gaming companies out of Southeast Asia and India. What we really bring is the technology behind games that can enable developer partners to convert their single-player games into multiplayer experiences in less than a day, right? So most of the studios and developer partners that we work with tend to make single-player games, which have a limited shelf life, less stickiness. We just enable a lot of exciting work for them. We take away the hard work and make them kind of convert that into multiplayer in the quickest span of time.
Great. Jill, can you? I think you're probably the more. Your company's probably the most well-known in this group. Could you give us a little information about what's going on with Voodoo?
Sure. So I'll just do a quick introduction of myself as I'm a publishing manager based out of Singapore in Voodoo, and Voodoo recently expanded its presence into Asia about a year and a half back, and hence why I'm part of the company now. I work with studios and henceforth developers across Asia, specifically Southeast Asia, South Asia, as well as East Asia, to come up with concepts translated into actual games and then launch them so that they can hit the top charts. So I've launched a number of games that have hit the top charts: Run of Life, Couples Yoga, Move House 3D recently. And yeah, just a lot of business development as part of the role as well, just to make sure that we can coach as many studios as possible within Asia and try and make them successful studios in the hyper casual world.
Great. So Eddy, let's go ahead. Let's try you again. What can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
So basically, I work as an UA in the OneSoft studio. That's my previous company. You can search for it. You guys know OneSoft, right? Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Yeah, you also are working with AdOne, correct?
Yeah. So my previous job was like work with Vietnamese developers. So I don't really work with developers overseas, but now we try to connect with developer overseas, and we want to connect with them and try to see if we can make any game success with them. Yeah.
And you're working in Vietnam, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we have a couple of places. We have Ivan's in China. We have Eddy in Vietnam, and we have two people down in Singapore. So I think we've got pretty much most of Southeast Asia and a little bit of Asia as well here. So it'll be a fun talk. We're hopefully going to be adding Ricardo from Yoda One, and what Yoda One Games is one of the largest publishers bringing Western games into China. They're one of the first ones. Some games like Crossy Roads and other games were very popular, and hopefully we'll have him come in. And if he does, we'll talk a little bit about that. For this talk, we're going to have some really fun stuff. I brought up a couple of questions for everybody, and each person, I have one for each person that I think is going to be very specific for you. But let's start off with something we can all kind of give a good answer for. So let's go ahead and, Jill, since you guys have been getting into the Asian hyper casual games in Asia, we'd like to go. Let's start with, like, what's the future going for Asia with hyper casual games? I just love to know your opinion, and then we'll go to Vikas, Eddy, and then back to Ivan.
Sure thing. So I think for starters, maybe I'll begin with I think how much we've been able to penetrate the market. So in the past 2 years, we've actually been able to actually grow the number of games that we actually launched from the Asian market from zero to about 10 to 15 in a year. And on average, we launch about 60 to 70 games. So that makes up about 15 to 20% of our entire market, right? What we are seeing is we're seeing a lot of talent in terms of development, in terms of execution, and we're seeing them in huge volumes, right? In emerging markets like Vietnam, Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India. So there's lots of talent there, lots of indie studios who are kind of budding developers as well as entrepreneurs. And I think what's quite interesting that's happening in that space is something that hyper casual hasn't really been able to unlock is the ability to also convert all of these gamers from these markets. Just to give you a stat, when it comes to hyper casual games, India actually has the most amount of downloads across our entire portfolio. And I think even if you look at the entire portfolio of hyper casual games globally, you would probably see India up top there. Something that we haven't been able to do is to actually convert them into paying customers with high margins, right? And I think that's a huge revenue opportunity for us in terms of monetization, right? So something that I'm very, very excited about to see in the future is how we can actually leverage technologies and actually use innovative monetization strategies to be able to convert them into high margin players as well as gamers in our industry. So that's something that we're trying to unlock. We are actually expanding into markets like China, Japan, Korea currently, and I think as a next step, we'll be starting to look into Southeast Asian as well as South Asian markets.
Vikas?
Yep. Thanks, Luke. So, I'll kind of take a little bit of a step back, right? Like Jill kind of touched upon it, but Asia is probably at the cusp of explosion, right? In terms of gaming. Obviously gaming has been far more evolved in Western markets. You've looked at US, Europe, and China. The way I look at it is India is just kind of, or Asia has just kind of started kind of looking at gaming. A lot of the gaming that has been going on in Southeast Asia is very, very colloquial or localized, based around certain characters. India has always had a lot of games around, I would say, card-based games and rummies and stuff like that. Yeah. Casual gaming is something which is very, very new, and the market is just kind of getting warmed up to it. Hyper casual games does face a huge challenge around monetization out there, but there are certain, I would say, peculiarities or nuances that are very, very Asian, right? Gaming obviously is by default a very social activity, right? People love playing games, but people love playing games with a lot of other people, right? They want to play with their friends. And one of the things that happened during the pandemic was that people actually were confined to their homes, and they had a lot of free time, and they wanted to kind of still kind of go out, play with their friends and find a way to connect with their friends, and gaming became a way. And you had these huge, massive successes, right? Like, Ludo King was probably one of the first things that came out in 2020 or 2019. It had already kind of taken a big shape, but then it kind of just absolutely exploded as the pandemic kind of got worse. And I can tell you today we are looking at a scenario where there are massive amount of dollars which are getting pumped into the market. There is huge amount of gaming studios which are coming in and building a lot of interesting content. The thing that excites us most about Asian countries, and whether you look at Vietnam, or you look at India, or you look at some of the emerging Southeast Asian markets like Indonesia, that there is a huge trend towards what I call as social, competitive, and multiplayer games. Okay. Obviously, we've all kind of experienced that, but a lot of these games are still in the domain of, I would say, is big publishers, right? You can see Zyngas and Electronic Arts and Supercells and all that producing those games. That quality of games has not been there, right? So I think the market is just warming up. There is a huge potential, but then you have to come up with games which is not exactly what is there in rest of the world, right? Like I don't know whether hyper casual in its current form is as monetizable. In the last 2 years, what we've seen is there is a huge trend towards different kind of games, right? Like I don't know whether you guys have heard about it. There's a company called MPL. There is Dream 11. There is Zupi. These companies are worth now billions of dollars, have raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, all on the back of competitive multiplayer gaming. Obviously, there's a real money gaming aspect to it. There are companies coming in Vietnam now, which are moving a little away, and they are more towards play to earn economy with NFTs. So there's all kinds of stuff which is happening in Asia. But the common binding theme in all these stuff is how do you get more people to connect with each other, play with each other, and get them to kind of be more interactive in their games.
Eddy, what have you been seeing?
So I think all of us know what makes a good games, but to me, the success of a game is depends on what the game is all about. So for example, right, you guys, for me, I want to share more about what we have been doing in Vietnam. We create games that people love to play, not we create games that we want people to play. So I have been noticing that there has been a trend, and people like the trend keeps the things alive. So what do I mean by that? So for the very first time, right, I noticed this when I see the game is called FNF. Yeah, it's very like a famous theme on the Google Play. So everybody keeps milking the games, right? And then we have Among Us. Then people like try to use those characters and try to mixing with other theme as well. And then we have Squid Game. So by making games with the things that going trendy and will help the games to go up to the top very quickly. And I think 3 months ago we have the new trend called Huggy. It's a game on stream, and everybody start to make games about Huggy, and that's why it's go up to the top very quickly. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's one of the way you can jump very high, and you can get to the top very quickly.
Okay, so a lot of this is kind of one of the things I've seen as well, is that trends are a big part of Asia. Is if something becomes very popular, you're going to see about 5 or 6 different versions of that kind of game coming up around there. And I agree. I think that's one of the things that's really big. Ivan, is it something also that you're seeing right now?
Yeah, actually, we both like with the speakers, because there's also like social part is quite important for the games, like multiplayer games. I can see like the trend is like Asia is growing, and the demand for the quality of games is also kind of crazy, because we can see like yeah, but the multiplayer, like some players would like to enjoy the multiplayer, and some would like to also to, yeah, the trending is also one of the keys of success, because like some trends, especially with the hyper casual games, if the development team can manage to develop game quite fast, you can catch the trend and also like enjoy quite good revenues on this one. And I see also because there are quite lots of copies anyway, but if you can catch up some unique techniques and polish the game to the level that users would like to enjoy, because Like there's also like type of games like SMR type of games that it's not about like only the progress you make or just the way you play, but it's also about the enjoying of the process itself. And I can see, so I think these are like, because most of the things were said already. So I think just add up the unique gaming techniques is something, make the games unique, because we can see also the trends of making a merge type of styles. I think on the whole market, it's not only about hyper casual, but in the games in the whole, because people try to merge different styles, and there's also key to success, because sometimes you can catch some target groups that would actually like both types in the same game. So I think yeah, the fourth part would be, I think, the merge different styles in the games, which would make them more successful.
Yeah, I'm from my experience and what I've been seeing is like in Asia, we're seeing that the kind of quality of the gamer, I don't know, they're kind of getting into the idea of playing games. This is kind of one of the, it may be first or second generation of gamers are actually coming in from Asia. So as we've seen very early on, they were very open to any kind of game as long as it was fun and having fun. But now we're starting to see a need for more maturity. And also, I think we're saying that a lot of the gamers here are very young, which kind of goes back to what you guys have been saying. It's like a lot of them multiplayer. A lot of them want to play multiplayer with their friends, and so there's a lot of a social divide on that. And also, I think one of the fun things that I'm finding is that like you said, they want something different. They want to play, and I think one of the greatest things I find with Asia, that living here for the last 12 years, is that they are open to experiment. If they see something they think will work, they'll just try it. I mean, if you look at, like, for example, with Japanese television, they'll just experiment and have whatever things they think will be funny, or whatever games come out. And so we've seen, like here in China, we've seen a lot of different ideas for hyper casual games. But that does bring up a big question when you were talking about India, and I think that is a really good question. Is like, yes, we have a lot of people open to hyper casual games, but we need to monetize. We actually have to make money off them. And when you're saying like India is not a very good monetization area, I mean, is this only happening because in India, or is this going all over the place?
I can take that. So, India is obviously a bit of a demand supply mismatch, right? Obviously, you've got a massive amount of audiences that are kicking in. And like Jill kind of rightly pointed out, it's one of the most downloaded games in hyper casually comes from India, right? And it's not just for Voodoo. I can tell you, like even with our studio partners that we work with, India is by far one of the biggest. Even when you're not doing a lot of UA activities in India, you're still getting millions of downloads, which means there is, and most of the hyper casual games would tend to monetize purely on the back of ads, which means there's this tremendous amount of video impressions available. If you have more supply, less demand, because less monetized, it's a cycle that's happening. One of the interesting things that have happened in the marketplace that I've seen, and has really picked up and is growing quite popular, is that people have started kind of monetizing their games via real money. So, a lot of these companies that I kind of previously talked about, with examples like MPL or Dream 11 or Winzo or Zupi, they are venturing out into casual gaming and hyper casual games, and they have their own platforms. So a lot of the developer studio partners are actually now building games specific to that, and there it's more about with real money games. So people do play these games. The monetization models kind of change significantly, because you're not just relying on purely ads. You're relying on then money. People are actually kind of staking money and then getting money back into it. So there's this pay to play kind of model and pay to earn kind of a model, which is kind of working out pretty well. That allows platform companies to kind of earn money, and it allows even developer partners to make a reasonably good amount of money. But the underlying trend that people get bored very quickly, and therefore they don't kind of stay on with the games. And part of the thing is, how do you kind of make your games more sticky, more engaging, so that they can pay, or you can monetize them in different ways. Right now with the hyper casual category, the challenge is the stickiness is kind of just stays missing, and therefore monetization levels remain poor.
Yeah, I mean,
One quick point I would also say is it's not just on the back of just pure real money gaming. I think one of the innovations that really happened in the market is also around microtransactions. So when people kind of play these games, it's not like they're paying around with 99 cents or $1.99, which is usually the pricing range that you're operating on. People are actually playing with 1 cent, 2 cents, 5 cents, right? That's the level of thing that goes on, but the volumes are so large that it still kind of makes sense for both developers as well as for platform companies.
yeah, I mean, Joe, I've also heard this. I mean, one of my friends told me when he was talking about Thailand, when they start playing like a regular game, they'll play for the
Yeah.
first 3 months, and they'll find that there's a lot of people who will play for the first 3 months until they figure out, oh, this is how I'm going to win, and then there's a huge drop off where they'll just like a million users will just drop off. I mean, is this kind of a trend that happens in Asia where you're going to lose people pretty fast? And your day 15s are just going to be, or I'm not even day 15s, like your day 5s are just going to be garbage.
Yeah.
I think it also depends on at which stage your game is being kind of launched at, because I think that's the nature of hyper casual in general, that it's meant to have a very, very short lifespan. But that being said, we still have pretty strong retention numbers. You know, I think we typically launch games that are above 45% day one. You get about 25% day three. You still get a day seven of about 10%. And you know, typically you need to ensure that you have a continuous influx of new users in order for the game to survive, because it's going to reach a peak. And you know, in terms of its age and its life cycle, it's not meant to be a game that's supposed to be there for a long amount of time, right? So something that we do is that we also try and see if the game can be hybrid casualized in a way. And that's where Voodoo steps in with some of our internal studios, where we would provide help to add a meta layer on top of the game, so that we are actually increasing the long-term retention of these games. So like, you know, trying to sustain that day seven of 10% and actually even increase it in possible. But I don't think it's an Asian specific type pattern that we're seeing. I think we see that across all markets just because of the nature of hyper casual.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. I'm glad to hear that this is because, like I've said, I have heard with more long-tailed kind of games where companies have had very good long-tail 5-month, 6-month success games come to some Southeast Asian countries. They just die pretty fast. So it's good to hear that this is not a big issue with hyper casual. But that does come up to another question about platforms. So, like Eddy, what kind of platforms are people playing these hyper casual games in Asia? I mean, we already know we've got Apple, the Apple Store, and we've got Google Play. But is there anything else going on in your area?
I think no. Yeah, because most of the people come from mobile. Yeah, should be the most from mobile device such as I on Android and iOS. Yeah, should be the two most.
The way I would
Yeah,
put that across is both Apple and Android still continue to be the lion's share. They are by far the most dominant
Right.
way for people to kind of access their games and play their games. There are alternative platforms which are coming in. Most of the telcos and OEMs have got their alternate stores, which are kind of putting their own rewards and play to earn models inside their app stores, which is there. I talked about some of
right.
these companies which have got their own alternate stores just because they are into real money gaming, and real money gaming is highly regulated. These companies have got their own platforms where people go out and play. But overall, in general, I would a lot more agree with what Jill kind of talked about. I think the real challenge really is how do you kind of bring the right kind of set of tools and capabilities for developer partners to kind of make sure their games are more engaging and more exciting. Like that's where I don't think so. It's about Google Play versus an alternate platform. I think Google by far remains the big thing.
Well, let's talk, Ivan. Let's talk a little bit about China, because
Yeah.
in China we have a little bit of a different issue where we don't really have Google Play, and Apple is a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, look, you know everything by yourself a lot because if you live in China, you know, like that's a huge issue for everyone. And but I think the local players know how to do play well because there's like the vendor markets, there's there's also some alternative markets, like they call it 5+7 and stuff. So these are really hard to operate, and but I think there's much more operations, as they call in China, because with the lots of amounts of the markets, because they're the main ones, the alternative ones. We calculate them all together, maybe a few hundreds, I think. So, but it doesn't mean that all of them have enough users or the paying users or the users that actually because but at least it helps to segregate the market a lot because different markets they may have different type of users, some have different age of users, and they all have their own taste. So let's say some market would have more of people who like there's like more female players or male players, or there's more like some players of certain age group, so which actually helps to segregate some kind of games which you know like for sure like they will work for certain markets within the country. So yeah, it's lots of interesting stuff to do here because it's not an easy market for sure, and in terms of
Right.
operations, in terms of traffic, in terms of lots of things. But I think even with the regulations, I think you can see actually the trend like because the main trend right now is making other developers within the country to go overseas because I think this is the major trend right now because
Right.
you know the history 2018 then 2020 now that comes like new regulations in 2021.
Right.
So I think like but still like I think the but within even a very competitive market, if the product is good, if the retention is good, if the game keeps the users coming back for something, because I think there are different strategies for going for the market on monetization ways. Like I see some developers going for maybe doing some fast, live fast, die young type of business. Lots of
Right.
ads, and they just coming back with revenues, and maybe
Uh,
they just have 7 days. Okay, goodbye with the game. And there's some will be like doing like long type of game because they would see like gamers coming back and with really good retentions for many days, which is a different kind of strategy. And I think for this market, just depends more on the product than on the company strategy itself.
yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah, I guess
sure.
I'm the only one that worries about the extra markets. I guess because in China I know in China we have a little bit of a different issue here, where instead of outside of Asia, where we also have a couple other places where they're kind of taking out the slack, such as with WeChat, they have their mini games, which are a lot of them are hyper casual games, as well as Douyin, which is TikTok all over the rest of the world. TikTok is actually starting to have mini games inside of the TikTok, but only in China
Right.
currently. So we're seeing a lot of opportunities for hyper casual games within China. But you're right, we have a lot of regulational issues going on right now, making it very difficult for anybody outside of China or even inside of China bringing real games into the market. But nobody cares about this because it sounds like everybody wants to talk about how can I make my operations better? How can I make my game more sticky? How can I make my game have more clicks on ads, and so that I can get more monetization? How can I just do everything right? And so I'm going to have to ask everybody, and I'm going to start with you, Ivan. How are we going to make these hyper casual games, or what is Asia doing actually to make these hyper casual games really exciting and fun for gamers?
Oh, especially for Asia, I think. Yeah, the thing is, we see lots of games. Yeah, as I said, like following the trends, making some games with really core gameplay. Because I see more and more actually hyper casual games, and actually they have the core gameplay. They have much more levels. Sometimes they switch something. So they almost start to look more like live core games, but they're actually hyper casual. They have short terms of sessions still like hyper casual used to, but they actually have much more interesting techniques. As I say, there's also like the second trend, like SMR games that actually not about the progress you make in the game or not making, make some achievements or whatever, which we used to in different kind of styles, but there's also something about the process itself. So let's say the games are polished to the level when you just enjoy playing. the colors, the sounds, everything just makes the because this is also certain amount of pleasure you have during the play, because everything is just like it makes you really come back to this kind of experience. So I also think like this is because like sometimes I think the carpet casual is like something short term. You just shoot some game, okay, the trend goes up, the trend goes down, okay, goodbye. But there's some kind of games like we have like even sometimes like stack ball, or let's say chain cube game, like which will have like the game's been starting like what 2017, 2018, and they're still rolling and they're still feeling good, because this kind of games are still getting like 5 to 10 million every month, and it means they're still being polished, they're still being improved, and they get more users every month. So uh, hyper casual is a big business, and even though I think there's a lot of age you can tell, because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but in 2018, we think this regulations probably they pushed the developers to make changes in their game, because they moved to hyper casual, they moved to H5 games, they look for other ways to monetize, they look for different styles, they go for different markets. So actually, this boosts the whole industry to make changes. And hyper casual, I think, also like became a trend in the West and stuff. So I think the actual trend of hyper casual comes from Asia. It's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but like because it was the change of the actual whole monetization model, and like developers had to make their turn.
Well, I don't know. We could say Flappy Bird probably pushed the hyper casual idea.
Yeah,
which is,
I missed that one.
yeah. But Eddy,
Right.
what's some of the things that you guys are working on, like with some of the games, or you're seeing with games here being made that are really pushing? I know, for example, with Cocos, we've been working with Ubisoft in Vietnam, and we've been seeing a lot of their nano games, and they've been really fun hyper casual games that have been pushed out. What are some of the things that they're doing?
I think we have to focus on the level design. So the game has to be the game has to be fun on itself. So people will keep playing, and they will keep coming back. So you will get more clicks on the ads, and you can improve the retentions. Yeah.
Okay, so something that makes it very actively repeatable, where you just want to keep playing. Okay. Vikas, how about you? Oh, I'm sorry, Eddy. Go ahead, Eddy. I'm sorry.
And then you can look for the upcoming trends to see whether you can add in the characters to test if people will like it or not. Yeah.
Yeah, we saw a lot of Squid Game games coming up a couple of months ago. So, anything else, Eddy?
No.
No? Okay. Vikas, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I would say last year and a half has been quite transformative for hyper casual industry. Like, not that obviously there were a lot more gamers coming into Asia in hyper casual category, but at the same time, you had some big changes happening, right? Apple introduced the IDFAs, which kind of put a lot of pressure on the companies on their CPIs. There's also challenges around publishers kind of moving their goalposts in terms of what they were actually expecting from their developer partners in the hyper casual. And I think broadly speaking, the fact that the space has been becoming very, very competitive, there are a host of issues that our developer partners have been facing around how do you kind of make sure that you're either delivering lower CPI, which is always a case of hit or a miss, but how do you kind of really maximize the UVs and LTVs of the game, right? You are looking at trying to make your game more engaging, more increase your play time, your ads per DAU, which is one of the biggest metric that most hyper casual developers would look at. How do you kind of improvise that? What we've done with a lot of our studio partners, and we kind of still kind of in the process of deploying this with a lot of these companies, is trying to take their game away from pure hyper casual into what we call as a hybrid casual play, right? We've launched our platform, which is called JamBox Arena, where we enable these developer partners to convert their single player games into multiplayer. So think about all the formats that you can get into multiplayer. You can introduce things like tournaments, leaderboards, duels. We even introduce user generated tournaments, which is your friendly matches. all this kind of adds a lot of meta into games, which is primarily into both into the space of trying to drive more stickiness, and then even people kind of enjoying the fun of playing with other people, right? Like, single player games have always had this challenge. Everybody wants to build multiplayer games, but they are so hard, right? Like, it takes anywhere between 4 to 6 months, huge amount of cost. You don't know what the returns are going to be. We want to kind of just break down the barriers for our developer partners so that they can launch their multiplayer games in a day, right? Like, if you have a core gameplay, you know what you want to do, what game you want to build, it can be enabled into a multiplayer feature. And I can tell you, like, the partners that we work with, they have seen phenomenal increase in engagement time, in retention rates, so all that stuff.
Give us the data. Give us the data. Any data you can give
Yeah,
us?
we've worked on some of the games which are like block puzzle games, IO games, bug battles, and stuff like that, which is warm game. We're talking about engagement time increase of about 35%. We've seen day one retention move up from 35% day one to about almost 46% day one, right? We're talking about level starts increasing by 25%. The monetization opportunities, which is your ads per DAO, increasing by 25%. So the more meta you add into the game, the more opportunities you add into the game for people to play and do more, it just improves all metrics all around, right? And not to say that it helps you to kind of get more users. If people like playing games, then they would get more people on their own, because once they are socially active, the games fly. So your cost of user acquisition tends to go down over a period of time. So there's a lot of exciting stuff that is happening right now underneath the hood, or beneath the surface, to get these developer partners to do much better, higher quality, more effective games. This page.
Oh, yeah. Great, Jill. It's your turn. Give us everything.
Sure thing. So I think I'd like to paint the picture more from the lens of what an indie studio or happy casual studio is doing pretty early in the stages, in order for them to be able to test a concept and see whether it passes the marketability check, because that's the first litmus test, I think, when it comes to happy casual games, to be able to determine whether the game is going to be TikTokable or YouTubeable or Instagrammable, right? So that you can actually get lots of users across many different countries. So something that a lot of indie studios are doing is, as the market has shifted, I think from 2018 to now, we're actually seeing a lot more female gamers in the market, and there are lots of feminine concepts that these studios are henceforth trying out, in order to make sure that they never have a problem with CPI. So I think that started with the game High Heels that Rollick launched early in 2021, and that led to lots of many feminine concepts in runners, in puzzles, in simulation games that were actually being conceptualized at the early stages. Um, Something that we are actually even showcasing in our dashboards, in our publishing dashboards now, is also the demographics when you're testing your idea. So we actually show the split between females and males, in order for you to get a good grasp of how masculine your game is, because from theory, of course, and from lots of games that we've been able to launch, we all know that masculine games never tend to scale well. You might have great stats, but then the moment you try and spend 50,000 per day on it, that's where you would see the CPIs go up, and you would see LTVs drop and reach some sort of a plateau. And all of these successful games that we've actually been able to launch last year have actually been able to follow more of the feminine sort of concept, and have had a higher feminine demographic versus a male one. So that's the first thing that studios are doing in general. I don't mean this from the perspective of just Asian studios, because I think when it comes to indie studios overall, they all adopt kind of like the same methodologies when they are ideating. The second thing that they do is try and pick a concept that is already working out well and has high viewership, high engagement on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, and convert that into something that can be hyper casualized, right? So I mean, of course, with the Squid Game saga, you all saw that happening, but actually what we've actually seen is the ability to actually see a lot more mainstream videos that are less that are not so niched to be converted into actual games. So for concepts that already have a community following behind them, and to convert that into an actual game, those games usually reach like a TikTok spike, and then they actually fall short after. So I don't think those Squid Games had a very long lifespan. But games that are extremely mainstream and will continue to attract the attention of a grandma, my mom, of a 10-year-old, a 30-year-old, those kinds of concepts are extremely mass market. And the ability for the studio to be able to convert that into a very, very smart, innovative mechanic is something that we feel is quite key. So that's something that we've actually brought into our ideation methodologies as part of our coaching program. When we coach studios, we make sure that we think about the marketability of the game pretty early on. We think about innovation, we think about depth, so as to make sure that we never have to worry about the future of integrating those features into the game when we do get to the stage of launch, basically. So yeah, that's the second thing that studios are doing, and the last thing is they're actually looking at concepts that were previously on Flash games, etc., itch.io, and actually hyper casualizing it. So finding, what would be a simplified mechanic that could work well in hyper casual, what sort of twist that is required for it to work in the hyper casual world, that it's easily understandable by people. And one of the biggest successes and case studies that we've had is City Takeover, which was actually a remake of a game called Mushroom Wars. I believe it was a Flash game, or it was on Steam, and it was hyper casualized, and it was actually one of our top games in 2021. So it's one of the key strategies that studios kind of take when they are in the ideating phase.
So before we go on, I got to get my journalism hat on. Are you saying that right now, masculine style games, when you try to scale them, you're having a huge issue with the CPIs comparative to, for example, a female game or a non-conforming
Yep.
game where it doesn't?
That's right. Yeah, and I think that's always been the case for hypercasual, because when you create something that is masculine, you're automatically narrowing down the audience to just males, right? And hypercasual is not supposed to do that, because it's supposed to have mass market reach, basically. So we've seen a lot more success with games that are not so niche. They are generalized, but they are enjoyable by different kinds of
But you haven't
demographics.
seen that as well with the feminine, though.
Yes, that's right. So there are lots more female players in the market right now, and this is something that is new, right? It just came out in 2021, 2022, right? There's lots more Gen Z, and I think also when you're actually testing on platforms like Facebook, Snapchat, TikTok, where you would see the majority of the Gen Z crowd actually go to. Hence why you would expect the marketability to be higher across that particular demographic profile.
Very, very interesting. I'm very. That's very, very fascinating, interesting stuff to know. That kind of goes back to my big question that I have for all of you is like, what is something that you wish you would have known before you started working in Asia and finding games here in Asia that are going to be either promoted here and monetized here, or going outside of Asia? I mean, what is something that you wish you would have known that would have saved you time and money? Ivan, do you have one, or do you want me to pass?
Yeah, I'll just say mostly just very simply because, as you say, it's very simple because not everything that works in the West will work in Asia, because some styles you would just try here and actually will not work the same as the work, let's say, in the West, because it's not only about localization of the style of the game, just the type of games that actually would not work here at all. Like, it works like in both ways. So I say if I would know like what kind of games would not work here, for sure, probably I would not give it a shot. But anyways, we've been trying with Asian market a lot, and that's why we had to try different styles. So I think, but if you don't try, you never know. So it's still we had to do this, and so yeah. So it's quite specific market. So you should be very picky what you're gonna round around here.
Eddy, what about you? What's something that you've learned?
What I've learned is when I work with the developers in my country, right? We try to monetize like every single countries, but this is not like this is not the same when I work with developer overseas, like for example in Turkey, and people always want to get the most number of their user from the US, and if the games don't get much user from US, right? The developers gonna kill the games. So what I want to say is give the game more chance. Yeah, if you cannot monetize in the US or tier one or tier two countries, right? So try to monetize in tier three and tier four. Uh, when I first came to the UA jobs, right, I start with the games, which was ignored by everybody because it cannot get like many user from the US, and the CPI is very high in the US market. So people just leave it there, like leave it to me to start to learn about the UA. But I try to monetize and I try to do some UA tricks. And after a few months, and the last time I want to share this. So I can basically get that game like 5K a week. Yeah, the profit 5K a week. So after a while, after when I try to change the UA and then do some monetize. So yeah, and surprisingly, so the most market the most profit come from India. So I can make like $100 a day from India and $10 from other countries. Yeah, and a week I could make 5K. So yeah, try to give the game more chance. Don't kill it if the CPI is very high in the US market.
Okay, so make sure. Okay, give them a chance and setting in a more a good goal that isn't too insane. Like, because I agree, that is one of the big issues a lot of Asian developers have here is that they go, oh, we'll just go to America, we'll make our millions of dollars, and then we're going to be happy and joyous and free. And it's really, a lot of these countries, it's like they're going to have a lot of different games that they're going to like. And just because a tier one country doesn't like it, there's going to be a lot of tier two and tier three countries that are just going to enjoy the game. And you just should work on it. I mean, and I agree. A lot of people have been working on these games and they've worked really hard, and not giving them a chance if you know that they're great is really kind of not only detrimental to not only you as a publisher, but I think also to the developers, and also having good. I think that's one of the big things is having a good developer relationship as a publisher is very important, because their first game might not be the greatest game, but I've known a lot of developers where their third game was amazing, and then their fifth game was even better. And so showing them that you care, I think as a publisher, is something important.
Yes.
That's good. Thank you so much. Vikas, how about you?
I wouldn't say there was, I didn't know this before I kind of came into Asia, because I've always been here and I knew it right from scratch. But one thing I can always seem to kind of ask more from our partners and even kind of drive this entire agenda is around being more data driven, right? Like in the West, obviously, we've seen some of the biggest companies, how they kind of operate. Games are nothing but data products, right? Like they are looked at as completely from a lens of how users are behaving, at what point they're coming in, what's their cost, what's their retention, what's their opt-out. Like you look at every single thing, and you don't kind of mess around with that, right? Data is the only currency that you should follow. Obviously, Asia is still, I would say, in many ways, studios are up and coming. They're learning the ropes along the way. They do get attached to their products or games that are coming with, and probably don't want to change as fast as they should based on what the data is telling them, right? Like, Jill kind of talked about how women's are taking over, how you can get your better CPIs, how those ideas need to come in. But a lot of the guys would not necessarily think through that lens. They will not kind of look at what data is telling them. and they would get attached to their concepts, right? And I think that's one area that you need to kind of improve on and get better at as you kind of progress. Data being just data driven is the single biggest thing that I would kind of ask for.
Good. Jill.
Yeah, I think for me, given the number of developers and studios that I've coached over the past 1.5 years, what I wish I would have known was the ability to be able to understand how they think in terms of ideation. Because I think it varies. Because I think when you look at Southeast Asia, the diversity by location and games library of games companies, it kind of demonstrates the uniqueness of Southeast Asia as a market holistically. But I think what's more unique is that the individual markets within Southeast Asia are actually quite singular. And so when it comes to coaching these developer studios, the way they think is also very, very different. But there's some sort of commonalities that you see, like in an Indian studio versus a Vietnamese studio versus a Thai studio versus a Singaporean studio, because their ideas and their concepts are pretty much shaped by what they've grown up seeing, right? And had I known the way they think, and I guess the unique way with which they all think differently, I think I would have been able to be a better coach for them from the get-go, for me to be able to identify how exactly I can twist their game, or how exactly I can twist their ideation process to something that works better for the hyper casual market. And yeah, I guess that's something that I wish I knew. It took me quite some time, quite a bit of experience, a lot of failed attempts, a lot of failed prototypes as a result, a lot of killed games, for me to be able to understand that there's a particular way that I guess I should be coaching these guys so that I can get the best output from them.
Yeah, so embracing the quirkiness of your company, I guess, is the big thing to agree. Yeah, I
That's
mean
right.
that yeah, because I mean, this is going to be the interesting part for a lot of people who don't know about Asia. Is like there's so many different cultures and so many different ideas about how they want to make a game. I mean, I've seen games from Vietnam. Some of the games in Vietnam I've seen have been incredibly interesting, especially seeing the growth. Some of the games here in China, I mean, we have a game here that was about a ninja fighting snail last year. That was one of our biggest games.
It was good. It was good.
It was a great. I mean, it was made with our software, but I mean, it's amazing how insane. And I think that's one of the great things about Asia, and I think that's something that I think a lot of developers need to understand. It's like you need to embrace the quirkiness of your team, and embrace like what are you going to be doing with your quirkiness. But I mean, going away from teams, and I'm going to go ahead and go to a new question because I think we only have time for one more question, and I think this is a very important question, especially for those who are trying to get their game out. And I think we have a lot of younger developers here in the hyper casual market, and I wanted to start with you, Jill. It's about what are some of the kind of the data or the information that you look at that you say makes this a hyper casual game that will work. Because I know both I talked to Ivan a little bit about this as well, and I know Vikas, you probably have a good idea about this. Like, what are the things? What's the data that you need to be looking at to say, okay, this is a game I could give it to Voodoo or another publisher and just run with?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I try to look at it from the perspective of a funnel, whereby when you're launching a game, you want players to come in and play the game, number one. Number two, stay in the game. And number three, pay in the game. So something that we look at, of course, at the beginning would be the marketability of the game, and the best gauge for it, of course, would be CPI. But not just the paid CPI, but also the blended CPI, because like I mentioned earlier, we're seeing a lot more platforms that can boost the organic traction of the game as well, and that means you're actually going to get a lot of organic installs on your game. Hence why we actually have developed something in Voodoo called a blended CPI that we actually look at when we launch games. The second thing, of course, would be your day 1, your day 7 retention numbers. If you're above 40%, that's a very, very good sign of you being able to have a good, strong foundation to the LTVs of your game when you're going to go into scale. And lastly, of course, the playtime. So I think a good benchmark for a playtime would be something beyond 10 minutes. Of course, depending on the subgenre, I would say 10 to 12 minutes for runners. But when it comes to puzzles, you would expect stats to be a lot higher because CPI is a lot higher there as well. And of course, that differs across different subgenres. And of course, when you're going one level down into retention, that's where, sorry, one level down into whether players are staying in your game, that's where you will look at a lot more things. You'll start looking at churn levels, drop-off rates, your win rates. You'll try and make connections between the correlation of your win rate versus the churn that you're seeing across levels, so on and so forth. And we also have platforms and tools within Voodoo that allows you to track these things pretty easily. And lastly, of course, making sure that your users are paying in the game, right? So up, down, your LTV in your high profile markets, and something that we do incessantly in the company when we are launching games is we A/B test. We probably have 5 to 7 day cycles when we do 5 to 6 A/B tests, which means that we have a new version of the game being uploaded almost every week or every 10 days, and you see 5 to 10 cohorts in each of those A/B tests. And these are actually very, very smart decisions that we make based on data that we're actually seeing across all of the players, its behaviors. We run surveys, we do play tests, and we also look at data that we are seeing across top hits, across our successful games that have worked well, and see if that's something that we can integrate into this new game that we are actually launching. So we look at data quite a bit, but of course in a very, very systematic fashion.
Right. Well, yeah, I would love to get the answers from the other book guys, but I just got word it's time for us to go. So
Sorry
at
for
least
that.
we got it. It's okay, Jill. I think.
In fact, Luke, I was about to say that I have my session starting in exactly 2 minutes. My presentation.
So I'm going to go ahead and get you guys out of here. Thank you guys, everybody, for watching, not only here or on YouTube or any other video platform. We're doing this during the Lunar New Year. So here in Asia, we wish you guys a happy New Year, and we wish that you have great success in your hyper casual games. So until next time, we hope you guys have a great day.
I would also just one more thing, Luke. I would just say, please hop onto the other session where we're giving a very, very exciting chat around how to turn your game into a multiplayer in less than 1 day. Right? That session starts in exactly 1 minute. See you there.
All right. See you there.
All right, everyone.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.